Earlene Rowland Underwood, beginning about 1912. This is a picture of James E. Underwood and Alta Earlene Rowland Underwood, beginning about 1912. This is a picture of me and Aunt Tootsie on the left and me and Mama on the right when I was about 2 months old. There's plenty of time. You don't have to hold them that long if you don't want to. Okay, these is little penny pictures of Emmett D. Jones, who married my daddy's sister, Ruth Rowland Jones, and this picture was made in about 1932 also. Your back ain't gonna hold out like this, Tommy. Okay, this is my daddy, and this was made a little later on, and I'm not sure what year. Sometime after 32. It might have been about 38 or 40. I'm just not real sure about that. I didn't say his name, did I? It's on there now. Okay, this is my daddy, John D. Rowland, when he was just a schoolboy, and I don't know what grade, but he was just real young, like about 15 years old, I think, when that one was made. Okay, this is Daddy when he was about 14 years old, holding his baby brother who died right with just in a few days of when that picture was made. And his name was Arthur Rowland Jr. This is a picture of Daddy when he went up to Michigan to see if he could find work, and he lived with some people he knew, and it was made just right after the Depression ended, like in 1939 or something. Well, we ready? This is Arthur Rowland, better known as Doc Rowland, who's my daddy's daddy, my grandpa. And this picture was made probably around 1938. This is Lily Mae Mahan Rowland, who's my daddy's mother. It'd be my grandmother. And this picture was made when she was like about 36 years old, and she died shortly after that. And I think that was probably made in about 1931, because I was born in 32 and she died a year before I did. So, I mean, before I was born, not before I died.
You're really dead. You're just doing this.
Okay, this is Ruth and Emmett Jones. Ruth Jones is Daddy's sister, and she married Emmett Jones. And this picture, I guess, was made in about 1930. This is Aunt Alta Lamb, Mama's sister, and it was made in about 1929 or 30. You missed this one right here, and I don't want to miss it because that's James's. I need something to point with. Okay, this picture was made at the old Wesley House Kindergarten over close to the stock barn, and it's when James Underwood went to kindergarten, and this is a picture of him when he was like 4 or 5 years old. I hope that comes in good. It was my finger right in the way. Okay, this is a picture of James's mother and his brothers and sisters, and his mother's name was Susie Phelps Underwood, and in her lap the baby is Ewing Underwood, and to her right is Earl, better known as Brother Underwood, and to her left is Maggie, who shortly died after this picture was made, and down below that is James Underwood. And this picture had to have been made in about 1925, 26, I believe. This is a picture of Ewing Underwood when he was a baby, and I guess that one was made in about 1924 or 25. And this is Doc Rowland again, my grandpa. And it was made up on Kings Highway, close to where they lived, and it was taken in about 1937, 38. That's Daddy and a friend of his, taken at Michigan while he was up there looking for work. That's just a friend of his. You don't have to put that in there if you don't. This is that same friend of Daddy's that he roomed with while he was in Michigan, Detroit, for a little while. Okay, this is James's sister Maggie when she grew up, and no, that's not. This is James's mother when she was young, and one of his sisters that she's holding, her sisters rather. And that's Maggie, his sister, and her husband, who was Clarence Wood. She married, and this is their first baby daughter, Margaret. Let's see if I got on that who that is. Okay, that's Margaret. That's a picture of Margaret when she was a baby.
Now, Margaret, is that Daddy's sister?
Margaret's his niece. That's his sister's daughter. Maggie's and Clarence's daughter. This is Dee and Maud Rowland and family and all the children they had at that time in 1938. Beginning standing up is Daddy and me and Mama. And the two babies are their twins, Emmett Ray and Lily Faye. And standing in the middle is Charles Rowland, and on down standing is Houston Rowland. I can hardly see them.
It may not come out on the camera.
It may not.
Because it's awful dark.
This is Aunt Tootsie and Uncle Minkin made out in front of the laundry when they run the laundry where Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company is or used to be in 1930. Oh, 38, whatever it is. I can't see it. And this is Mama and Daddy and Charles, Houston, and me. We was little shapers,
37.
Okay, I can't see it. And this is Aunt Alty and Uncle Ben Lamb's youngest child, Ruth. And Aunt Alty, of course, is my mama's sister. Okay, this is my grandpa and his second wife, Pa Rowland and Ma Lonzie. This was a long time after my grandmother died, and he married again. And I'm not sure about the year there, probably about 1934, 35 or sometime. Go. Okay, this is James's baby brother, his half-brother, Billy Underwood, who was adopted by some people named Spence when he was real young, like about 8 or 9 years old. And this is Emmett and Ruth Jones, and this was probably made about 1940 or something like that. What I forgot to do was say that this batch of pictures was made between 1938 and 1945. Okay, I don't know really why we're getting that one, but that's Daddy standing in the middle where Mama cut his head out to put in a locket that she had. She wanted a picture of. And this is a picture of Daddy on this same truck wreck. And he looks like he's about asleep. He was driving the truck when it wrecked, when he had a wreck. And I don't know, but I sort of doubt that this is the same truck wreck. I think that's a different one, because he was in 2 or 3. And these were back about 1938, 39. Just a different view of the truck. Another view. I don't even know what state he had the wreck in or nothing. I have no idea. And that's same truck, same wreck.
Is he in either one of them two?
No, that's just some people that, his bosses and stuff that got him out there when he had the wreck. And that too. Just somebody he worked for and somebody he knew that happened to be there. Now he's in that one. That's him right there. That's Daddy. Same wreck, all these are. Okay, this is a fleet, excuse me, this is a fleet of trucks that used to work out of the stock barn, and they hauled hogs to Atlanta, Georgia. And Daddy sometimes drove one of those trucks, but the person in this truck, in this picture, is Uncle Minky, who is Emmett Jones, and I believe he's this one right here. Okay, this is some friends of ours who lived in the house with us and rented an apartment from us on Kings Highway after me and James married, and their names are Charlie Lee and Madeline Robinson, and their two children, Jackie and Linda.
Is he the one that had the bait shop?
Mm-hmm. And this is Madeline Robinson and a friend of hers' baby. This was way before I knew her. I don't know what year. Howard and Blanche Underwood, and that was taken the year before me and James married in 1945, and Howard is James's older brother, and his wife Blanche Taylor Underwood. And this is Howard and Blanche's three kids at the time. Faye, and Jimmy's the youngest, and Bobby's the next to Faye in 1945. Robinson and their first baby, Jackie Robinson. Okay, this is a picture of Daddy when he went in the Navy, and he went in shortly before Pearl Harbor was bombed in 1941, so he must have went in the Navy in about 1940, and this is Daddy right here. Okay, this is me when I was 5 years old and a little friend of mine, Rose McBride. And that's Mom and Daddy. That was taken, when I was about 4 years old probably. That's Daddy when he was in service. The first time he was in the Navy, and he was in the Army the next time. It's another picture of Madeline Robinson, who was Madeline Lax before she married. Charlie Lee and Madeline Robinson. These are some more friends of ours that I sort of grew up with, Lily Hampton and Holden Ruby Joyce Russell. And this is Bobby and Jimmy and Claire Faye Underwood in about 1943. That's Emmett Jones, and I'm not sure about the year there. They lived in Ohio at that time. That was it's Uncle Minky.
Can't tell who they are real good, can you? The pictures.
They're so old. I just. Okay, that's Terry Russell, who was Ruth Russell's. This is Louise Underwood, made in 1945. She lived with Mom and Daddy and me and James and just various ones after me and James married. And she's holding a neighbor's baby upstairs.
Now, Louise Underwood, is that?
That's James's sister, his baby sister. She's the one next to the Billy Spence that we looked at a while ago. Okay, this is me and Louise Underwood, and that was made just before me and James married in 1946. And this is me holding my baby brother Jerry, and I believe this was made just shortly after me and James married in 1946. This is Mama and my brother Houston that's next to me. He's 2 years younger than I am, and taken with Mama in 1945, and Daddy was in the Army at this time. This is Mama and Daddy, and this goes back to when he was in the Navy in about 1942 or 43. And Mama's got on the dress that I got married in 1946. This is me holding Jerry, my baby brother Jerry. And this was made in 1946, right after James and me got married. This is a picture of me when I was 6 years old in 1941 and 42. Another picture of Daddy when he was in the Navy, about 1941. All right, I believe we're ready for James's Army pictures now. And these were made between 1941 and 1945 when he got out of the Army. And this was on a beach somewhere. I don't have any idea where these pictures were made. They're just his Army pictures. That's his silhouette. That was one of the pictures that didn't come out too good, but still that's him. I know it is. He told me who a lot of them was, but this is a friend of James's silhouette. It didn't turn out real good either. That's a double exposure of James and one of his friends. It didn't turn out real good. Okay, this was in 1944, and these were some friends of his clowning around on a beach somewhere, and this is James right here. This was made in Trinidad, wherever in the world that is, but these were some people going down the road, and he was going down the road in a Jeep, and he took pictures along the side of the road. I think this one is in Germany, made in Germany, and that's James and a friend of his, and this is James on this side over here. Am I going too fast? This right here is a picture of his discharge, James's discharge in 1945. I forget what month, but it was like close to Christmas time in 1945. And this is James laying on the beach in 44 or 45, somewhere. I don't know where the beach was. But he was like 24, 25 years old. And this one right here is probably was taken at the same time, only a close-up of him. He sure looks young.
59 on the picture.
Yeah, 1959. That's can't be 1959.
Well, they may not have been developed.
This is when we had reprints made of the negatives. He lost his pictures, and he only had the negatives when he came back, and so we got reprints made of them. So that's where the confusion is. Because I know it was made before 46. Okay, this is some more of him. In his fatigues, he always said the army clothes never did fit him like he wanted them to fit him. He was particular about that. Okay, this is James standing up on the back of his motorcycle, and this is his motorcycle. At one point when he was in the Army, he was a motorcycle sergeant, and he rode an Indian motorcycle one time, and then he later got a Harley Davidson. And I don't know which one this is.
I believe that's an Indian that he told us.
Well,
I'm not sure.
anyway, that's him standing up on the back seat, and a friend of his sitting down on it. This one was took right along about the same time on a picnic table somewhere. I don't know where. Just an Army buddy of his. And this was taken outside his barracks, but I have no idea where. Whether it was in the States or whether it was overseas, I don't know. Another friend of his, Army buddy. And this was in Trinidad. Same picnic table somewhere. And this is James. This is probably the same picture took alongside the road somewhere in Trinidad. Another friend of his, don't know his name.
That in the can there. Trash can.
Yep. And this is James in the trash can, clowning around with some army buddies outside the barracks or the PX. Looks like the PX somewhere. Another picture of James out beside that picnic table, but it's a double exposure too, and you can't see it too good. And this is a picture of a dog that James and his buddies sort of adopted. And I believe this was in Trinidad when he was over there. And it's a double exposure too, so you can't see it. But he thought a lot of that dog. This is right here is just pictures of some palm trees in the tropics, but he made them while he was in service. And this right here was somebody that lived there. He was not in the army, I don't think. James told me one time that he used to bootleg whiskey into him some way or another. This is just some more friends of his. I don't know who. Let me put that dog out. Okay, this is another friend of James's on that Indian motorcycle, I guess. All right, this is James standing up on the back of it. He was always so proud of that motorcycle. He told me about all the stuff he did and the trouble he got into with the army and how he got busted for wrecking the motorcycle and just a whole lot of stuff. And this is another one of him while he was just getting a little bit of rest. Looks like he's laying outside of the mess tent, or maybe it was the tent where he slept. I don't know, when they were overseas, but I don't know where he was at that time. More army friends. And this is just another army buddy. And another one. And this is James right here. And this is just another friend of his. Looks like they was drinking beer. And another friend of his.
Dead in front of a sign.
This one right here was made while he was in boot camp, I think, and he was just out running around, and it's in front of somebody's tomb. That's a landmark of some sort. Oh, he looks so young. And this is James out in front of the service club, and I think this was while he was in boot camp too. Just another army buddy. And another one. And this is James on the beach. And that's the same picture right there, only a smaller one that I carried in my billfold for like about 25 or 30 years. And that's another picture of his dog that they sort of adopted when they was overseas. And that's a picture of him with this, I don't know if that's a helmet or just an army hat, but and I don't know what that is hanging out of his pocket, but it might be a tobacco sack with a thing on it. 'Cause he had to roll his own cigarettes a whole lot in his life. He was good at it, though. Another army friend. And this is another army friend. He must have been a good friend of his for James to let him sit on that motorcycle as much as he did. And this is James standing at attention with his rifle on his shoulder. I'd say this is a boot camp picture because it looks like he's had all his hair cut off. And some more army friends. That's the bootlegger's son over there by the mule. And some more. And this right here is James. He was telling me that he was trying to do a little bit of trick photography, like he was leaning up against something invisible and he fell about the time they took the picture. Okay, this is another double exposure, but that is James holding one of the civilians' baby over there on the ocean somewhere or another. Okay, that was a tobacco sack in that pocket, 'cause there's James there rolling him a cigarette. And this one here must have been took just right after that, 'cause that's him smoking a cigarette. And this right here is where they sent him, I think just before they shipped him overseas, probably. Just another army buddy. Looks like he's about drunk to me. And another one. And this one right here was made along about the same time, and I also carried this picture in my billfold for a lot of years. This same picture. Okay, positions is reversed. In this one, James is sitting down, his buddy's standing up. And he also said that's the fattest he ever was in his whole life. This is just friends. James is not on this one, I don't believe. This is him, but it's so dark you can't tell it. Him and his buddy. This is the guys around the mess tent. Looks like they might be cooking up a little bit of grub. And too, James was a mess sergeant at one time while he was in the Army, but he got promoted and busted so many times that I can't remember when or where or nothing. I just remember him telling me. Now they are clowning on the beach again, trying to do a little bit more trick photography, looks like. Okay, this is me in 1945, and that was made a year before me and James got married. Okay, this is me and James. We married in July the 27th, 1946, and this picture was made in the fall of 1946, and we had just bought this old house on Kings Highway, and he fixed it up and painted it and remodeled it, and this is where we lived, and we rented out apartments. Mom and Daddy lived down on the far end with all my brothers and sisters, and Madeline, Charlie Lee upstairs, and Ruth Russell in the middle apartment with all her kids.
Now, was that Ruth Walker?
Yeah.
Same
Same,
Ruth Walker.
same
She just
one.
married a Walker.
Yeah, she
Okay.
just later married Walker. This is Louise Underwood, and she was living with Aunt Tootsie and Uncle Mink at this time. And I don't know what year this was. But most of these pictures was made in 1946. And that's me on my Pie Rollins horse, and that's his house in the background. And that's the dress that I got married in.
Hold that a minute.
That good? I don't even know what that means. This is a friend of Daddy's, but I don't know where that, I think he is an Army buddy when Daddy was later in the Army.
Must be, 'cause here's another, some of them.
This is friends of Daddy's when he was in service. And this is Daddy when he was in the Army now, and a friend of his. And this had to been, he went in the Army in the latter part of 1945. Him and James had planned to go in the Army together. And James decided he wouldn't go after Daddy had enlisted, and so James stayed home, and me and James got married while Daddy was gone.
Well, I bet that made him happy.
Yeah, he got an emergency leave to come home to have it annulled. And I threatened to run away from home, and so Daddy didn't do it. Okay, this is Daddy when he was in the Army.
Going down with it just a little.
That good? Also Daddy when he was in the Army. This was the same year me and James got married. Okay, this is my two brothers, Houston next to me and Charles next to him on Pa Rollins' horse. These are friends of Daddy's when he was in the Navy. It's right here is Tommy Woods, who was the son of James's sister and her husband and Margaret's brother. Margaret Hutchins' brother. Now, this was made on Kings Highway by an old 35 Chevrolet that we owned at that time, and that's Lily Face on the very front end of the car, and Jackie Robinson down by the fender, and I don't know who the other little girl is in the checkered dress. Don't know. This is Daddy in the army hat, and James leaning on him, and Jerry, my brother, was a baby, down in the corner. This is my baby brother Jerry, and this is how he looked when I got married. Okay, this is me and James in front of our house that we had just bought, and we hadn't been married but just a few months.
Is that the house Daddy rebuilt?
That's the house he remodeled. It was falling down when we bought it. And then several years later, after Jimmy and Billy was born, we sold the house and moved away. And the house is gone now, but the spot on Kings Highway is still there. They got another house on it now. But I was 13 years old, and James was about 25 or 26 when this was made. Just a picture of my daddy's friend. Don't know who he was. Here's a picture of my daddy when he went in the army.
He's a good-looking fellow.
He sure is. He's a handsome dude. I guess Judy's the only one of us took back after Daddy's looks. And that's me on my Pyrolin's horse.
Hold on just a little bit longer.
And that's my daddy on Pyrolin's horse. We did love to make pictures on that horse. Okay, this is Ewan Underwood, and he's in the first car that me and James ever owned, a T-model Ford with bubble dancers pasted on the side of it. And James brought that car home in wash tubs and bushel baskets in pieces, 1 million of them, and he put that car together out in the front yard of that old house on Kings Highway that we just looked at. We was real proud of that car. It was the first car I ever drove. This is Houston and Charles on Pyrolin's horse. That's me and James's sister Louise. I think that's made in front of Miss Taylor and them's house, but I'm not sure. And that's starting at the back, Jack Caldwell, who James's sister May married, and Buddy Caldwell, Jack's brother, and me, and Mr. and Miss Taylor, and Howard, and Blanche, and their 3 kids. And James must have made the picture at McFadden School on the steps.
It's good right there.
That's a good picture. That's me and Jack Caldwell and Blanche, Howard's wife, on them same steps. And this is me on a bridge at some park in Nashville. I don't remember what park it was. In the wintertime. This right here is a picture of Mama holding Jerry and Louise next to her and me next to Louise, and I'm wearing the first skirt that I ever made in my whole life. I got on the first pair of high heels that I ever owned in my life. That's me out in the backyard of that old house on Kings Highway, and I'm holding Jimmy. He wasn't very old, like maybe a month old. Now these pictures are not too good. I don't know what happened to them, but anyhow, that's me and James, and that was made down at the National Cemetery. Me and him and May and Jack was out riding around that day or something. And that's May and Jack Caldwell, the same. Took it the same place. And we was probably all mad at each other and not speaking because we did that regularly. Okay, this is James, made in 1946, and it was taken down on North Maple Street by the side of where First Cavalry Bank is right now. But it used to be, the Princess Theater was there on the corner, and in behind it was some kind of a boarding house or something. It's not there no more. This is Claire Fay and Louise made at May and Jack's house out on Cannon Overall's farm on the Braveville Pike. And that's you and Underwood and Bobby and Claire Fay and Louise, I believe, at Barfield when you went on the house in Barfield. It's Jack fixing to throw a rock at somebody. Looks like he's probably playing hide and a switch or something like that. This is Howard Underwood and his baby sister Louise. It's Claire Fay Underwood. May and Louise, James's two half-sisters. May and Jack. And that's Jimmy peeping over the fender of that car, I believe. Not my Jimmy, but Howard's Jimmy. That's Mr. and Miss Taylor that we thought a whole lot of. And they was Blanche's parents. And this is a picture of somebody that Ewan used to know. I don't know him. That's Howard's Jimmy and Claire Fay and Bobby. Is that all of them? Oh. Okay, this is me and James at a carnival right after we got married. No, that was before. This picture was made before we got married, shortly before we got married. I slipped off and met him at the street carnival, and it was raining. And you can tell their hair is soaking wet. That was just before we got married. Anytime I seen him away from home, I had to slip off. And I did a lot of that. And there's Blanche and Shirley, Blanche and Claire Fay and Miss Taylor and Bobby and Jimmy, looks like. I don't know who else on that. Bunch of them. This is Buddy Caldwell, Jack's brother. He's dead now. That's Bobby and Claire Fay in 1946. Up at Miss Taylor's house. On the upper end of Kings Highway. Howard and Blanche that same day. James and Howard that same day. That's Howard in the suit, of course. And May and Jack that same day. That dresser stool we drug out of the house to sit down on and might have pictures made, really getting the work out. I think we tore it up that day. And this was another Sunday where we ventured over to McFadden School and had all these poses made. There wasn't a lot to do back then. And that's me and Howard in the middle and May on the other side of Howard. Back to Miss Taylor's on the dresser stool again. And that's Jimmy and some little girl that lived next door or something, and me and James standing up on the porch. This is Ewan and in his front yard at Barfield and his neighbor's horse. And this is James posing on the steps at McFadden School with Blanche's hat on and a whole handful of weeds. Okay, this is the side of the house on that old house on Kings Highway, and the picture of the people that lived upstairs. And the bottom window was, we only had 2 rooms, and the bottom window was mine and James's front room. And this is our T model again, and that's Daddy standing beside of it. Wish I still had that car.
Yeah, definitely.
This is in the backyard of that house at Kings Highway, and that's Charles and Faye and the neighbor's baby. My sister Faye. And there's Pa rolling in his horse. Okay, this is Daddy propped up on the back end of Howard's car, which later me and James bought from him. And I don't know, but I believe that's an old 32 Chevrolet or something. I can't remember. But I know Howard had it first, and then me and James bought it from him. And this is James out in the backyard of that old house on Kings Highway. Out under a peach tree. This is Sterling Hutchins, Margaret's and Aubrey Hutchins' oldest baby. And Margaret was James's niece. Okay, this is James on this, leaning up on his T model with the bubble dancers on it. This is the lady that lived upstairs that had the baby right over us that everybody had his picture made with. Tommy, you hungry, honey? Okay, that's me and Louise showing out on the fender of the car, and that's Ellis Underwood, better known to us as Papa, who is James's daddy, standing on the outside of the car, and my daddy on the inside of the car. And that's my daddy and Ewan sitting in a T-model. And that's Ewan on the same car. That's Daddy and Mama and Houston and Charles and Faye and me, all going down the road. We had just been down to the river swimming, and we was going home. John's got a picture of our back. And that's a picture of me and Billy Spence, or Billy Underwood. That's May and me and Blanche. This is just a friend that lived down the street, Martha West. There's James and Daddy out in the front yard. Miss Heron lived over next door in the house, you can see. And me. And Lily Faye and a little girl that lived over there. This is Lily Faye over here. And this is Jimmy when he was about, no, I believe that's Judy. They're about the same age in the front yard when she just barely could sit up. Can't hardly tell them apart except for their hair. Jimmy's hair was darker than hers. Okay, that's me and James sort of romancing it up at another carnival. And we was done married then, I think, but we hadn't been married too long. At least I had to tell Mom and them that it was made after we got married. This is a picture of Mama when Daddy was in service. James on his T-model. And Ewan. We done got one like that. Got one like that one too. That's James and Ewan. And that's me and Jimmy when he was about a month old, I guess. And that's Jimmy. And this is the picture that James carried in his billfold for so many years. It's got a hole in it where the button on his billfold pushed a hole in it. Got that. And this is my little school friend that died when we were still going to school. I was just a little bitty girl. Martha Ryan. And me and Madeline Robinson and the girl that lived upstairs. I don't remember her name. One of Louise's school pictures. My brother Charles. Me and Louise out beside the house where they dressed chickens, where Aunt Tootsie and Uncle Mickey had a chicken farm, and they dressed chickens.
Was that on Woodbury Road?
On Woodbury Road, yeah. James worked for him at that time, and they paid him $20 a week. Me and Louise had just been painting the kitchen in this picture on Kings Highway. That's me and James and Bobby, and we're back out at Cannon Overall's place there. That one is another one of them took down beside what used to be the Princess Theater, where Calvary Bank is now. And that's May at some park in Nashville. We went somewhere every weekend because we didn't have nothing to do, you know, ride. And that's at Ewan's house at Barfield, and Ewan and James picking a guitar, and a friend, those other guys are friends, and that's Louise standing there beside of James. And this is Uncle Minkett out on the Woodbury Pike at his chicken farm, clowning. Another one in the backyard of James out under a peach tree.
Louise,
That's not too good, but that's me and Louise in our bathing suits, supposedly getting a suntan. Me and Louise and James. Ewan on his friend's horse. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's James.
No, I can't.
Maybe that's the, there you go.
There you go.
That's James and me also made at a carnival. I think, though, at a different time. The carnival came once a year back then. And it was always over there right in behind where Walmart's is. It was a big old field over there. And we'd always go once a year to the carnival. And that's Howard and me and James eating watermelon up at Miss Taylor and his house. And Jimmy and Clairfay and Bobby. Or Bobby, Clairfay, and Jimmy going from the other side. also Jimmy and Faye and Bobby and some little friends that I knew. And that's me walking down that road to the river to go swimming. River, I guess it was our river road. Louise on Pa Roland's horse.
Good gracious. You bring your work down here.
And that's me and James at Mr. and Miss Taylor's.
Both of you at it, huh?
Howard and James.
You about got yours done? Well, tell me what you up to.
We're putting all these
Fixing
pictures,
pictures?
on the movie.
Yeah, okay.
And that's Mama and Charles and Lily Faye and
I've been
Jerry.
working all the morning too.
And that right there is you and Underwood's first car after he came out of the Army, and that's Buddy Caldwell standing beside him. Me and Claire Faye and James. Got that. That's Houston and Louise.
Done to doing it up the age. Well, that's gonna be pretty, fella.
And that's May. Standing out in that old front yard of Kings Highway.
He's always a whining. I gotta get back to get that.
Me and Jerry.
That's all right, I can get back to you. I ain't all that big.
And that's me and the little baby that lived upstairs. And that's Papa. That's Mama and Daddy. That's probably the only time you'll ever see Mama in a pair of pants. She's got on pants. That's me and Claire Faye and Bobby. Blanche and Miss Taylor took out through the windshield of a car. A T-model, I think. It's Charles's school picture when he's a little boy. That's Blanche and Claire Faye. It's some house they lived in. I don't know which one. Okay, this is Miss Sally Davis, who Papa married in late in life. I mean, he married her like in 1950 or something or other. She was a good lady. This is Becky Hutchins when she was a baby, Margaret and Aubrey's oldest child. And that's my sister Lily Faye in a park in Nashville somewhere. That's Tommy Woods. I don't know who that is. I think that's Billy or Jimmy one laying in front of Ewan's Oldsmobile. Back then they gave handicapped veterans an automobile free. And that was the first car that he got. They did that for several years, and that was his first one that he got.
And whose car was that?
Ewan's. And that's me holding Jimmy again. And this is some of Daddy's friends.
Put your thumb up just a little.
This is one of my favorite pictures right here. That's me and James. James is holding Jimmy, and I'm holding Billy. And I guess Billy was probably about 2 months old, I guess. So that means Jimmy was about 2 years old. And that's me and James standing in front of our 46 Buick, 41 Buick, I guess it was. 41 Buick, yeah. Convertible.
I wish I had that.
And we thought we was uptown in that car. That's the one we hauled a mattress into Mays to spend the night. And on that T-model too, we did that all our life, just about. Okay, this is Daddy standing beside Rooster Messick's car. And Rooster Messick was the town bootlegger at that time. And that's Linda Robinson's baby. That's Madeline Robinson's baby, Linda. And that was me down on the river somewhere where we went to go swimming. And that's Jerry and Judy. I don't know how old they was. They couldn't have been too old then. Howard, Blanche, Bobby. Another one of me at a local annual street carnival. That was right after Jimmy was born, or Billy won when I was fat. And that's Mama and Judy, when Judy was a baby. And that's Papa and Jack and me and May, and we had all went on a picnic out at Walter Hill Park, and we was all mad that day. Nobody was speaking to anybody, and that's Papa holding Jimmy. And that's Judy. Me and Jimmy, and that was made out of Aunt Tootsie's on Woodbury Pike. And that's Louise and May and me made on an old bridge at Barfield. Check out them brown and white saddlocks which I got on. My, oh my. And that's Louise and Jack Caldwell and me out at Aunt Tootsie's when they was building their chicken farm. And that's James holding Jimmy out there too. And there's a whole slew of them. of us. Out there, Jack, Louise, May, me, James, and Jimmy. Another one, Howard and Uncle Minky, Louise, James, and Blanche. Me and Claire Fay. There's Jack holding Jimmy. And that's Daddy holding Judy. James and Jack. James got on Uncle Mickey's hat. That's me and Jack and Jimmy. That's me. That's Jack trying to look like he's cutting Louise's head off, but somehow or another our trick photography never came out right. And that's Howard. And Big Jimmy looked just like Howard. Big Jimmy looked like Howard when when Big Jimmy got killed. Looked like Howard did when he was young. And it's Aunt Tootsie and Louise. And Aunt Tootsie's holding Jimmy. That's Houston holding baby Judy and Lily Faye standing beside of her. And that's me and James and Jimmy. And that's me holding Jimmy and Judy. Louise. And that's May holding Billy. I got Jimmy Underwood wrote on there, but that's Billy. Jack and Jimmy sitting on top of the car. That's a clean car, ain't it? We kept a clean car back then. And that's my mama and daddy in the back. And me in between them, and Houston, and Charles, and Lily Faye, and Jerry. And I believe Mama's holding Judy, so that was all of us kids. That's Aunt Tootsie and Uncle Minky. And that's Jack clowning again, because he didn't dig that footing for Uncle Minky and him's chicken houses. And that's me and my mama. It's right after Judy and Jimmy was born. The summer after. And James holding Jimmy and Jerry standing over by his side. James called him Preacher. And our bathroom is in the background. Ain't Tootsie holding Jimmy? And it's me and May and Jack holding Jimmy. And James. Another one of my carnival pictures. That's Madeline Robinson from upstairs, and Jackie standing, and Linda the baby. James and Jack and Jimmy. Madeline Robinson and Jackie Robinson. Okay, that's Jimmy's 1 month old picture.
I'm just looking over.
And that's me holding Jimmy, so I guess that other picture a while ago was May holding Jimmy when I said it was Billy. That is Jimmy. It's James holding Jimmy. And that's James holding me. James and Jimmy. May and me. Me and James.
They're roughing somebody up there.
They're playing. That's Jack and James. I don't know who the other one is. Probably Daddy. That's Jimmy and Judy. And James and Jimmy. Me and May pretending we're hitchhiking. In the rain, I think. May and Jack. They got married just 2 weeks before me and James did. And Brother and Prudy got married 2 weeks before May and Jack did. Jimmy and Judy. Brother and Prudy wasn't hardly ever with us to get pictures made and stuff, 'cause they wouldn't get out and stroll around everywhere the way we did. That's Judy when she was a month old. I believe she was about a month old. Me and Louise holding Jimmy. And that's Mama holding Jimmy and Judy. And that's Howard holding Jimmy. Okay, this is Billy in the car and Becky Hutchins standing outside the car. I believe it was at Ewan and Nora's house one time. That's me holding Billy when he was about a month old. That's Billy and Becky Hutchins. And that's Bobby Underwood. And that's Jerry and Judy and Charles, I believe, at Cothran's graveyard. Maybe Mama. Oh, it's clarified. Bobby and Jimmy and I believe that's maybe Shirley and my Jimmy. No, that's Becky and my Jimmy and Billy. And that's Jimmy when he was about 9 months old. He had just learned to walk. And that's Jimmy, and the little bitty one is Billy, and Becky, and Big Jimmy, and Bobby. And that's Gary Hutchins. James and Aubrey. And that's Aubrey and, Becky and Gary and Jimmy and Billy and some other kids. I don't know who they are. That's my brother Houston Rowland and George Caldwell, and that was made in Chicago in 1950, about 1951. And that's my mama. All of these pictures were made in 1950 and 51, and that's Howard and Blanche. And that's Jimmy. It was made at McFadden School, and of course he wasn't going to school, but I think Houston took him up there the day they made school pictures and had that made of it. And that's Brother and Mr. Taylor. James is squatting down in the front. And Aubrey Ewing. That's May and Jack. that's Ewan and Jimmy and Claire Fay on the end. And I don't know who that is in the middle. Maybe Nora and Billy standing down on the ground. And that's Gary Hutchins. And that's James holding Jimmy and Billy on top of that old 41 Buick convertible we had. And that's me with Billy on my shoulders and James and Jimmy squatting down. And that's me and Jimmy just before we went to Chicago. And we was living with May and Jack out on the Shovel Pike. That's me and May standing up by the car and Jimmy running around on the ground. And this was Christmas just before we moved to Chicago, and that's Tommy Woods and Gary Hutchins and Margaret Hutchins and Aubrey Hutchins. And that's Jimmy and Becky on the rock outside of May and Jack's house. And that's Howard and Jack and Aubrey and James and Mr. Taylor. And that's May and Jack and Howard and Jimmy and Billy and Miss Sally and can't tell who else it is. And that's Ewan and Nora and me and May on the couch and Jimmy and Billy on the floor. That was Christmas at our house just before we moved to Chicago. And that's Houston and Louise. And that's Nora and me and Louise and May. And that's Billy in his little snowsuit. And May and Jack. And Ewan and Aubrey. And Howard and Blanche and Claire Fay, Bobby and Jimmy and Becky Hutchins. Baby. And that's Nora. That was at our house on Battle Avenue just before we went to Chicago. And that's Howard and Blanche and their kids, just like the one I just had on there, I believe. James and Jack. And Claire Fay, Nora, Blanche, Miss Taylor, and May. Jack and Jimmy. And that's a picture of Brother. And that's Nora and Claire Fay. And this is that school picture of Jimmy, a bigger one than. And that's Judy. That's Judy when she was a little bit older. Becky Hutchins. Linda Robinson. Thomas Wayne Robinson. He is the son of Clyde and Nancy Robinson, friends of ours. That's Howard. There's James. No, that's not. That's Aubrey Hutchins. And Aubrey and Margaret and Sterling and Gary and Becky Hutchins. And Brother and Prudy and Miss Taylor and Mr. Taylor and Aubrey and Margaret. Blanche, Miss Taylor, May, Margaret, and me. And that's Jimmy and Billy and Becky and Bobby and Jimmy. That's James and Judy, I believe. No, that's not. That's James and Billy. That is Jimmy. And that's James, Howard and Jack and Aubrey and James and Mr. Taylor. And that's Billy. That's Aubrey and Gary. Margaret and Aubrey Hutchins. And that's me and Billy, just before we went up north on May's front porch. And that's May and Jimmy. And that's Jimmy. And that's Howard and Blanche, Faye and Bobby and Jimmy. And that's me and Mama and Judy and Charles and Jerry. That's me and Jack's house over at Bell Buckle, I believe. It's Mark Tucker, Louise's oldest child. Jimmy on his tricycle. And Billy. Me and May. Margaret, Sterling, and Becky. Sterling Hutchins. Jack, holding Billy and his puppy, and Jimmy. There's Jimmy and Billy on Ewan's Oldsmobile. Tommy Woods, Sterling Hutchins, Margaret and Aubrey. And Aubrey and Margaret and Becky and Sterling. It's Billy. My brother Charles, when he went to McFadden School. That's Clafay and Lilifay, I believe. That's Jimmy. That's Richard Underwood, who's a cousin to James Underwood. That's me and James and Jimmy and Billy. That's some friends of ours when we lived in Chicago. And Billy. And it's G.W. Caldwell and Jimmy, and that's Jack's brother, and that's a Buick that we had just before Tommy was born, and right after he was born. And that's a guy that we used to know, and Jimmy and Billy. And that's me and James in Chicago. And that was our Christmas tree the year before we went to Chicago. Jack. Ewan and Nora. Jack and May. No, Ewan and May. And James and Louise. Tommy and May and Margaret and Jack and Aubrey and James and Sterling. And Sterling and Becky. Mr. and Ms. Taylor. And that's my sister Lily Faye holding Billy. Houston and Aubrey and Ewan. Faye and Nora, I believe. It's me and May and Jenny. May and Jack. This was at a dinner at May's house. That's Papa, Jack, May and Louise. Can't tell who all them is in the back. And same day, and that's me and James out on May's front porch. And me and Louise and Aubrey, Jack, and May. May and Billy and Becky and Jack and Louise and Jim. Jack and James in front of our Buick. That's my sister Lily Faye. School picture. My brother Charles, McFadden School. My brother Houston, McFadden School. Okay, that's James. And by the way, these were made in 1950 and 51 too. Also, I mean. That's my brother Houston Rowland when he was in the Navy. Stationed just outside of Chicago in boot camp. And there's Billy's 3rd birthday, I believe, Chicago. That's James and one of his buddies in Chicago, and that was made at some kind of a fair or something other up there. And that's Tommy. And that's the car we had when Tommy was born. That's May and Jack. They had moved to Chicago too at that time. That's Houston and Jimmy. Getting ready to decorate the Christmas tree, and that was our first TV set we ever had. And we came back to Barfield sometime or another during that time. And that looks like Tommy out in the backyard and Jimmy. That's me and Jimmy and Billy when we moved back down here to Barfield. And we couldn't make it, so we went back to Chicago after about 2 months. And that's me on somebody's horse at Barfield. That's Lily Faye and Billy on that horse. And that's Charles holding Billy. And that's Billy out in front of a car that we owned at that time. Jimmy on that horse. And that's Jerry and Judy and Jimmy. Mom and them lived in a little old shack down on the creek at Barfield. That's me when we went. No, that was the first time we was in Chicago, just before Tommy was born. Or a little while before Tommy was born. That's me and James. That's Houston when he first began to play a keyboard, his little bitty organ-like thing. And that's me right after Tommy was born. And that's some friends I knew in Chicago, or I thought was my friends anyway. The fat one's named Viola something Johnson, I think. And that's Billy with his 6 guns on, and he was Poncho. Jimmy was a Cisco kid. That's May and Billy and one of her friends. And that's Jimmy that made out in front of the building where we lived. James. And that guy's name was Douglas, Russell Douglas, I think. This is a picture of the top of the building that we lived in Chicago. And that's Richard Underwood. Him and his wife Helen lived up there too, Chicago. And that was one of our old cars we had when we lived up there. And that's Richard Underwood. It's Jimmy. And that's Tommy in his little baby bed. That's Billy in the Lincoln Park Zoo with his little balloons. Jimmy sitting on the car. And the background was across the street from where we lived in Chicago. And that was took off of the roof. Seen in Chicago. And a streetcar down below, in the street below where we lived up on the 3rd floor. Part of the time we lived on the 3rd floor. It's James and Jimmy and Billy. That's Houston and George Caldwell. And that's Tommy, about to go to sleep with his little baby bottle. And that's James and me. And Jimmy and, no, Houston and me. And Jimmy and Billy. It's that lady named Viola that cleaned the building where we lived. And Houston and James. And Houston and Jimmy, Billy, and Tommy. And me holding Jimmy and Billy. And that's Tommy sitting in a chair. Houston. James, Billy and Jimmy. Jack Caldwell. It's Jimmy showing off his muscles. Houston and his guitar when he was in the Navy. And that's Tommy laying up in the middle of the bed on his belly. That's Tommy. Looks like he spent a lot of time in that little old bitty baby bed. We back to Barfield. That's Jimmy and Billy on the front porch at Barfield. And that's me holding Billy and Tommy and Jimmy sitting on the side, and this is Chicago. That's James in Chicago. And these pictures was made just before Tommy was born, and that's Jimmy on the horse, and holding him up there with James's friend, and Papa pointing his finger. And that's me sitting in the car waiting for Tommy so I could go back to Chicago. And Papa, and James's friend, and I don't know who that is holding Jimmy over there one side. This was a friend of ours. James is really Billy, Chicago. These was our first colored pictures, by the way. Jimmy on a stuffed bear in the park. And a little boy named George on that same bear. And Billy. And Jimmy on the back steps with his daddy and Billy. This is Willie Hugh Bowman, who was originally from Murfreesboro, and he